That's charcoal.
Oh. Okay, I
So
thought
the
something else.
graphite, yes, that's a graphite. I'm sorry, you know the difference between graphite and charcoal?
No.
No.
Okay.
We're basic here.
Started at the very beginning. So the graphite usually looks a little shiny.
It says graphite on the top of the box, that's how I can tell.
But if you take it out of the
That's
box,
me.
then you're lost.
And I could be lost, that's why I kept the box.
And your charcoal looks very deep and dark. Part of the reason I really encourage charcoal eventually is because with graphite, and then we'll have to back up again, even with this one, if I try to get as dark as I can get, it's still kind of gray and it gets shiny. And then, you know, you try to take a picture of it or something and the light shines on it. Where charcoal, wow, very, I mean, look at that black, just like that.
So this thing is a graphite.
Are the Prismacolors graphite?
Prismacolors are graphite, yes.
They didn't, Trader Joe, I just gave Trader Joe's the list and she said, well,
Oh.
here, and she said, we don't
I
have
mean,
any of
Cheap Joe's, yeah.
Cheap Joe's. She said, we don't have that, but we have this. And it's
Well, they
like,
used to have it.
okay, yeah,
They
they
had
know.
it changing.
They
Yeah,
don't
that's
have
a dark graphite, I'm quite sure, that's pretty nice though, for
Okay.
graphite, yeah. Good to start with graphite as we get, I think, going, but any questions?
Well, I don't have graphite, so I'll just.
Okay.
If extra, would you like to borrow one? That would be wonderful, thank you.
That's wonderful, thanks.
So when you say dark,
6 feet dark enough? That would be excellent.
Yes.
yeah, okay, so they go from,
Oh, okay, do you have a question?
Wait,
Thank you.
well, yeah.
How hardness works in your tools.
Yeah.
If you remember, can I do it here? I don't know if you guys do this. When I rip off, I always
Yeah.
fold.
Yeah,
Yes.
you don't have to steal.
packing
To
tape.
get it and try to find it, like, where is that? You don't have your glasses on or something. Is that in your way? Can you see okay right here?
Yeah.
All right. So, if you're thinking, remember we used to graph in math?
Vaguely.
Right, you start at 0 in the middle. So 0 in pencils and stuff is basically your HV. It's kind of middle of the road. If you go this way, I'm just using this as an example, it's not necessarily right or left, you're going to get harder. And as it gets harder, it's going to get lighter. Now, if you have a variety of your graphite pencils and you put them, you know, you try one out, the first one will be very light and then the next one gets a little darker and then they progressively, if you're using the same pressure, because it's more compact graphite in that pencil, it's compressed. And the same with the charcoal. So as you go to a 2H, you go 4, it usually goes by double increments, 6H, 8H. And this is, the lighter ones are often what I recommend for watercolor, you know, when you're doing your undersketch or watercolor. But then you also have to, it's harder, so you have to be careful it doesn't dent the watercolor paper. If you're going this way, 2B, 4B, 6B, etc., it's going to be getting softer lead. I call it lead, but it's either graphite or charcoal. And it's going to get darker. Does that make
So
sense?
why are the letters B and H? Are those words that like the B stands for something or?
The H stands for hard. I used to know this is a good question. I'm having a feeling it's probably not English, but I don't know.
So if it
That's a
has
great
just,
question.
if
I
it
don't
has
know.
just a B on it, it's a 1B.
It's kind of like a wannabe, yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of soft.
So what if I have one that says an F or a?
F is kind of in the middle too. That's kind of HB, F. I use them interchangeably. I'm not sure. Another good question that I did.
So these are all types of graphites?
This can
Those
be
are
either
charcoal.
graphite or charcoal.
I wonder what mine are.
So you can look at your graphite, her graphite set, which probably goes, we'll just go 2B,
It start, yeah, it's everything from 2B up to 8.
8, and see here you have a,
H's, it
I got
has
it.
H's,
has a H, so the H,
2H, 4H.
it'll say on it, this one doesn't say, this says HB, but that's 6B, so you, there it says
So that's
6B,
2, 4, 6.
there's a 2,
Whatever you wrote on the paper is what you wrote.
oh, okay, so you have a variety to play with.
Okay, so that's charcoal. Those are charcoal pencils.
These are charcoal
And
pencils,
these, my little two, are some sort of graphic.
ebony black, yes, I believe that's a, but it's a, the ebony's a little softer than a lot of the graphite, which is why I recommend it. This one's nice because this has no wood around it. And I don't know, I just, if I see them in the store, I'll grab them sometime. But you can sharpen them. If you're sharpening and there's wood around it and you have a soft, I wanna call it a lead, but if your charcoal's really soft, you have to sharpen it very carefully because the wood is harder than the charcoal and it's gonna break. Sometimes even with, if you take a pen knife or a X-Acto knife, sharpen it that way very carefully.
Sarah Lynn, just to clarify, so the ebony graphite is charcoal?
No.
It is not, okay,
Graphite,
I'm getting it.
all right, charcoal is basically burnt wood.
Okay, and that's what I got here.
Yeah.
Okay,
And you can tell, this is kind of shiny.
okay,
That's the charcoal.
All right.
So that's a graphite.
thank you.
This is for my throat, so I had to check and make sure it was. I was taking my eraser and play on doing watercolor. I just put my coffee over here. Otherwise, you stick your brush into your coffee. So, pretty, a little clearer,
Yeah.
helpful?
Yeah.
So what are all these numbers? Now, what were we gonna talk about?
You're gonna tell us how to hold it versus.
Oh, yes, thank you. This started with the circles, right? They
And then
keep
which
me on
one do
track.
we need? Which one did
I
you
think
say?
she said starting out with one of the graphites, a dark
Okay.
graphite.
Yeah, we won't get too messy too fast. No, no. So, yes, we're not writing, and that will tighten us up. Now, physiologically, this is natural, right? We just have this nice little fulcrum right here, goes back and forth, or just with your wrist, but if you can use your whole arm, that's nice. This is not natural. You feel how awkward that is? And if I'm gonna be doing a large circle, this is gonna be hard to do. Get a nice curve, and then it kind of, it's gonna be hard. So I wanna work with what my body does as much as possible. This limits it, because there's no, this is not working as much. So it's good if you can hold it this way, more like a brush or something, and a little further back. What this is gonna do is it's gonna loosen up your drawing and involve your whole body, or a good part of it, instead of just this. But a lot of people draw that way. And I'm not saying it's wrong, there's nothing wrong, it's art, you can do what you want, it's self-expression. I'm giving you some ideas and hints, and you pick and choose what you like. But I'm right and they're wrong, no. Not at all. So with this way, sometimes you can get a nice, and if you notice, my fingers are on the paper, and I'm just kind of drawing until I feel like, that might be a pretty good circle as I'm getting more comfortable with it. And then eventually I will lay down the pencil. See, and it's still not quite perfect. It's a little loppy there. You could do that on your paper here. That works pretty well. But I can see what the last line really went flat. It's flatter on one side than on the other. So if I want to now, okay, that's generally what I want, I'm going to define it a little more. And I'm going to kind of come, see, I'm already doing without explaining it. I'm turning the paper. So this is a natural curve, and I'm going to turn the paper as I go around to get, I'm off the paper now. See, these smaller pads drive me crazy. So eventually, you make a couple little extras, and don't worry about, if we looked at some of those drawings from the masters, they didn't erase and fix every little line. Like, oh, this is, use this to pick out highlights more than you're using it for making corrections. Why is that? Because then the hand of the artist is evident in the work. If you make it too perfect, it looks like a photograph.
Looks like an
Want a
accountant
photograph?
drew it.
Take a photograph. You what?
Looks like an accountant drew it. I do have
How
my,
are you doing that with your account?
I do have
Yes,
my-
you do. Gosh. Ever trusty. Okay, so you can get a compass. Do you remember compasses?
Sure, yeah.
They're hard to find now.
Yeah, and hope before.
Yeah. I had a really nice one. I think I gave it to my grandson or something. No. Anyway. So can you feel that difference with the curve, and it starts feeling a little more natural? Okay. Shape number 1, circle. Very nice.
It's weird to learn how to hold it like
To hold it like that. Yeah. It feels awkward at first, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I had a friend, she's a accomplished pastelist, and she's, oh no, I broke my finger on my right hand, I can't paint for 3 weeks. I have another hand, and it's not as practiced as our dominant hand, but it's our brains that are drawing, not our hands. So often, like especially if I'm doing a video or something and I need to because you have to stay out of the way of the camera. I've learned all these things in the last couple of years. Sometimes I'll have to take my other hand to draw this so it can be seen. And that's okay. I think it's great. Sometimes it adds a little extra of a spark of creativity in there, something that's not so perfect. One of my friends, her whole theme of painting, mine is Dancing with Stardust, because I loved Carl Sagan. And I think the pastel, it's dust. We're all dust, But hers is, it's not seeking. It's something like seeking imperfection, which I think is wonderful, because we get too worried about things being perfect. And this gives us, it works our other side of our brain if you're an accountant or something like that, but they do overlap. There is math in art, so.
Oh, no.
I'm leaving.
Everything
Not
is
math.
math, everything.
There was some show and the guys, it was Saturday Night Live. My understanding there would be no math. Who said that? It was, shows pop up into my brain. All right. How are we feeling? Good. Oh, look at these nice circles.
You can like there's other swords.
Right? Doesn't it feel like it comes out a little more? I mean, go ahead and try a circle with the old way. It's hard.
Especially them coming up,
Yeah.
that part is
This-
really
this-
hard. It comes nice and flat. Yeah.
And it's not, if you want that same curve, this is happening anyway. So you just keep turning the paper and you get that curve going around. Of course, with these smaller pads, you get the spiral or whatever in the way, and it falls off the edge, and so you get big pieces of paper. All right. So the next is squares. Same thing. This is awkward. This is a little awkward. What's the most natural? That's a natural line for us. So turn your paper to get that. Couple tricks. Yep, turning the paper is a trick. So what I'll do is I'll turn the paper to keep my fingers up so it doesn't catch on that. See how I turn it? So I'm using that natural aspect of my physiology to get in a straight line. I have no idea what time it is. Oh,
It's 11:02.
11:02. Okay, so okay.
I still have trouble with parallel lines.
Yeah, what I did is I started the can you see my paper okay?
Yep.
Okay. You know, this line here, and I just kind of just move my body back a little bit and keep that
Oh.
same angle going.
All right, I was doing it every side, changing, no wonder it's.
And then if you
parallel.
do stripes down, just keep moving a little bit. And you get that nice, and this is why we practice. We talked about practicing law or practicing medicine. Art is one of those things. We're just practicing forever. I don't think we ever achieve. Every now and then something comes out pretty nice. And trying to not be sketchy, like it's very tempting to do these, you know, little sketchy things like that. Try, that's why I do this stuff in the air. Try planning in the air, looks nice and straight, put it down.
Do you drag one finger to have kind of like a
Yeah,
reference?
I've got,
Okay.
I don't know why it's my ring finger, it just happens to be what I do. So that way I can be drawing in my brain and kind of visualizing it on the paper before I lay it down.
Yeah, it's more.
Of course, then if you have more drawing, and you have to be careful because you can smudge it, so that's why I tend to work upper left to lower right because I am right-handed. Do we have any lefties in here? Yes, we do. I'm going around the table here. I am. I had my first time teaching adult art, I got to doing the hand. Like you use the three-dimensional shapes to do a hand. So I'm like, all right, everyone set your hand down, draw your hand, you know, using cylinders and stuff. And then I got around to this one gentleman, and it was obvious he was struggling on his paper. I'm like, what is going on? Some of you have probably heard the story before, I'm sorry. And he said, well, he says, I look at my hand, and then I try to draw it. Because I was saying, set your left hand down, and look at your hand and draw that. And now I just like, set your other hand down. There was one gentleman, they had larger paper, and after 10 weeks, he still was just drawing a little thing in the middle of his paper. You want to try to fill the paper, you want to get a little looser. I mean, we're tight enough when we have to write all the time. It's nice to get bigger.
So when you say don't be sketchy, which is kind of what I started out with, you're saying just
Sketchy would be like,
make-
it's insecure, you're doing all these little lines to connect, just think it through and make one nice
a
line.
definite line.
Yes. Bold, courageous, be bold. Mine's on the cubes already.
Oh,
I'm gonna
sorry.
do it. No, go ahead, Daisy. So here's a trick too, if you're having trouble showing you all my tricks and secrets, there's no such thing.
That's why we pay the big bucks.
I love, it's interesting, throughout the years, all the different communities I've kind of been in that were, you know, the oil painters in Maine and then the watercolor. Pastelists seem to be the most open, accepting, and sharing community, besides potters, that I have found. They're willing to share anything with you. Well, that's my secret. Well, no, there are no secrets, especially now. If you just go on YouTube, you find anything. So, if you want a nice straight line and it's not quite there, take my pinky, I run it, be careful you don't get a paper cut, along the edge of the paper. I'm holding, now I'm using my writing ability here, but I'm gonna hold this stiff and just run my finger along the edge of the paper.
That's worth the price of admission, right?
Right there.
I can never draw a straight line.
Who'd have thought? It's so easy, and then you just come down here. And just,
I resorted to this, but she cried.
You can use whatever you want. I'm not the bossy you. Well, right now I'm a little bit of bossy you.
That's right, you can go ahead.
So that's a nice trick. My design instructor showed me that. It also works like when I'm framing a painting and I put the backing on, you know, to cut off the extra edge of paper. I hold a straight edge, no, you could. Single edge razor blade.
Oh.
Single edge razor blade. Hold that in my hand, hold my finger there and just and makes a nice even cut. I don't need a ruler, I don't need a straight edge or anything, just run it along the edge of the frame, cut that off.
I bought a paper cutter, just a little one, $20.
Did you get one? I don't go.
Yeah, and it had a little drop-down blade, and you could clamp it in.
Oh, it had the little edge on the side of it? Yeah, I've seen those.
So how do you hold your hand again, Terry?
When I'm doing what?
Well, when you're making the straight line, when you're.
Along the edge of the
Yeah,
paper?
how do you, yeah, what do you do with your pinky again?
So I'm holding the pencil and then the pinky is just, kind of just stuck out there, so it's just.
Distract.
You lock your kind of
So
finger.
you held the pencil as if you were
No,
writing
you
when
want
you
to
do
be
that.
going this way.
Okay.
And,
So hold
and
the
that was
pinky
my
very
least
stiff.
straight line doing it
Yeah,
that way.
looks like.
Obviously, it doesn't work. Okay.
And that's one thing, is because sometimes. Triangle, up, triangle. What's the best way to do a triangle?
I haven't gotten there, huh?
Divide your square in half.
Oh, there you go. So you want that straight line again. We want to make a nice straight line. Right. And then turn the paper. So, straight line. Whoops, I got onto the side too much. Straight line, straight line. Nice triangle. Here I'm taking a video and I'm not showing the video. The paper. Sorry, video people.
Well, if you're drawing an equilateral triangle, should you put a little point out here or no?
I mean, you have to measure it then.
Well, in your mind's eye, you're measuring
Yeah.
with a little point.
So if I were gonna do, notice like, say I'm taking a larger piece of
Charcoal?
charcoal, yes, fine charcoal. Again, travel brain, just every now and then it just kind of goes,
Yeah.
tiny hiatus, it just stops.
I don't have to travel to get that.
Yeah. So if you want it equilateral, you're going to have to measure out the same distance. So what I did is I took the length of this to there, that to there. So it kind of got two dots. And that will. Now notice that the trick I'm using here is that instead of drawing with the tip of it, I'm actually using the side, which makes a nice straight line if the paper doesn't move.
Because a picture or something, a vase is going to in essence be an equilateral
Right.
triangle.
If you're doing, exactly, a lighthouse or something, it has to be, I'm gonna exaggerate it here. It needs to be the same distance out on both sides. See how it's easier to turn the paper? Yeah. Make it a little less there.
Oh, so you give yourself a little follow the dots.
Yeah. So I basically measured from that central line out each way. And I'm just using the tools at hand. I'm not using a ruler or anything. It's just use whatever you have. You could use your little finger if you want. You know, it's gonna go this to there. It's my measure, that didn't work out so much. And then you can connect the dots. Ooh. Well, it's not a lighthouse. I don't know what it is.
Is it time to talk about the lighthouse and the rings? I remember
That's a
that
3D
vaguely.
thing, yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Which we could get to maybe today. I had.
So
I'm
when you're doing the pyramid, it has to be a straight, it doesn't have to be a skinnier triangle.
Yeah, but that's a three-dimensional thing. I'm still on just the top basic shapes. If we were going to draw, this is normally where I have things out for you, but I had pictures. The printer wasn't. But I will send them to you. I have a picture of, no, I don't want to. Say if you had a cat. I'm looking for an object around here, something I could quickly use.
How about the spools of yarn right there?
What about the water bottle?
That would be good. The water bottle, I'm looking for something a little more complex that we can use. So if you were gonna draw this water bottle, but keep it in 2 dimensions, right? We're not thinking the 3-dimensional shapes now. We're just using square, circle, and triangle. What would we use to set this up in?
Lines, straight lines, or rectangle.
Rectangle.
Kind of like a rectangle, right? So we have a long rectangle that is, if we measure here, that's a 1, 2, 3. It's about 3 times as high as it is wide. And then the top kind of comes in a little bit. So it's another square, but it's got an angled thing on it. So before you know it, we basically, now we can combine those lines and make it look like we have
A water bottle.
a thermos, yeah. Just by using those basic shapes. So we could look at anything. I want something more interesting. Oh, I know what I have. I'm sorry. I do have things. But if you see something, let me know. You're gonna love these things. Wait, nope, still nothing really.
Is the soap dispenser interesting enough because it gets bulbous, but it starts kind of square?
Oh, that's good, yeah. This again, cylinder, right? And then just curved lines at the top, not a cylinder. See, I'm already thinking 3-dimensional. By keeping it at the rectangle. Keeping this, it's kind of a circle. Can you see? I'm trying to get out everybody's way, it's hard. So, but it's not a circle, it's more of an oval, it's elongated. Drawing down there, this is, I'm at a very awkward angle here. And then up here, a little flattened. I'm gonna switch out a graphite just so you can see it better. Going to charcoal. Another tall skid, this little tall rectangle there. And this would be great if I could turn this around, which I can't. But this is gonna give me a better curve than this. See how that feels very awkward?
Yeah.
Where this, because I'm using my whole arm in it, it's gonna give me a better curve.
So even when you're working on your easel, you turn your paper?
Yes, I do. Because I have my board like this. And when I have paper on my board, I don't always use the clips. I will use these office clips, which are great. So I can take a piece of paper, unclip it quickly and turn it. Or I can turn my board. I do have multi-layers on my easel, because that does happen sometimes. Or you can take it off and you can lie it down. If you notice it, well, you have the drawing notes. Did I send those out? You did. I did. I sent these out. Down at the bottom,
Not these, but those.
we learn the rules so we can break the rules later on.
Yes.
So it's helpful to have some foundational knowledge to build on. And once you have that, then you can play around with it and kind of break it and do different things. I have a picture of a cat that I'm sending out to you. I'm going to look at it here. That you can even, did anyone take the drawing pets class that was online, one of our very first ones?
I'd love to take that class.
It was watercolor pets. Pam and I were like, well, what can they do at home? So we had to, like, our first drawing class came up with printer paper, pencils in the house, and eraser. You know, you couldn't get out and get fancy artsy tools.
There was always Amazon.
which we found out, but then we ran into trouble with Amazon, those watercolor brushes, do you remember? Were you in that one?
They fall apart?
They wouldn't point,
Oh,
but I didn't realize that until after we got going. Yeah, this is taking too long. A couple more seconds while you're practicing. Yeah, I'm not finding it. Okay. It's in there somewhere. So if we wanted to do the cat, I'm so trained at looking at things that sometimes it's hard for me to draw from my imagination.
I was gonna ask you that, is it an either or, like do you learn to do it?
It's like playing the piano. I have to read music because I was trained to do it that way. My younger brother didn't learn piano that way. He did it by ear. So he can just sit down and play. It's kind of like that with art too. There's certain ways that, well, I think it's a habit for us. When we get into perspective, one of the hardest things I had to do is I can't do it, but help people to break their way of drawing in perspective. It's like you have to relearn something, and that's harder than learning it right in the first place.
Cause I do better.
Did I answer your question?
Well, I do better at drawing, when I was doing acrylic, I did way better if I looked at something and then tried to like copy it, but I always felt like I was copying it. Even if it was a feather or something that was
No,
whatever.
actually, drawing from life is the best thing, because even though what we think is in our head is not necessarily what is actually there. And most of the greatest artists work from observation. They draw from observation, not from trying to remember what's in your head.
You can't possibly absorb all the detail from memory.
Exactly. You can do pretty well, but stretching is good, yes. So if doing something like this, now we're just staying with those basic forms we have. We have the circle, the square, and the triangle. We can draw this. So I don't know if you can.
will it look like a cat?
I'm trying to get it so you can see a bit as well, but I have to look at it. All right, so normally I would now take my paper, because the format of this cat, it's kind of in a square. It's almost as high as it is wide, but the majority of it is kind of vertical. So I would turn the paper vertical. So you get your paper to go with what the painting or drawing is gonna be. So what do you see for some basic shapes?
An oval.
The oval, the body,
Body, the
kinda?
oval.
All right, so we'll start with a big kind of, just a big oval. And then maybe another kind of flattened oval near the head. But you gotta leave a separating area. Should we do this,
Do a rectangle.
the rectangle in the neck?
Okay.
And it looks so, yeah, so the rectangle in the neck. I'm not gonna be able to step back to look at this. I'm just gonna keep this really simple. All right, so we have a rectangle.
My head's going
A rectangle went the other way.
Oh, yours went the, and then the head kind of overlaps. Look at that, I've left that, I've gone so big, I'm not gonna get the ears on there.
I know, mine did the same thing.
The head's about half the size of the body, yeah. Ears go up there. And I'm gonna do another little kind of circle. Who draws like this? Where have you seen drawings like this? Cartoons, Disney. All those simple shapes, mostly circles, ovals, some squares. That's how they did it. And then that'll pop out. I'm just thinking right now, the chest area, this is just my thinking. And then a couple rectangles coming down. This one's at a little angle. I'm gonna set him down on the table. All right. There's our cat. How does it look?
No tail.
No tail yet, yes. All right, so a long rectangle out there. But you can think as simply as this. Now we can start looking at the angles. See that angle to the ears? Sorry.
Yeah.
The angle of the neck. So now I'm going to draw a contour by kind of doing lines that are tangent to an area of the body. And you remember, see, here comes the math.
Yes, tangent and cotangent.
Yeah,
No
we're
idea
just
what
gonna
they
use
mean,
tangent.
but-
So if you have a curve, this line is tangent to that curve. And to make a good curve, you just do a lot of tangential lines and you get a curve. So I'm kind of gonna be working off that. But we'll look, oop, there, where his neck comes in is first, except that's for kind of the line at this. So see how I'm kind of looking at the angles of each, sorry, you can't see the angles. Right? Is that making sense?
Mhm.
Okay. Not too worried about the tail. I'm also kind of measuring. There, his chin goes out. What's the angle across the muzzle? Cats have muzzles?
Sure.
Whatever. And foolishly, the ears would be up there, nice little triangles going off of the ears. But they fit down into the head. They don't, the ears are not sitting on top of the head. They're going down into the head, right? Fit down in.
Like a beak.
Kind of goes into.
Yeah, I know, it doesn't try.
Yeah, what is a feet? What did I show? Kind of a flatten.
And you gave yourself a table edge, right? A
Yeah,
surface.
then there's nothing here, right? But if he were,
It would help to ground, to know
To
where to
ground
stop
him,
things.
right. It was kind of sitting there, but this is one of those bent sheets of paper, so there's no lines. Of course, if you're making a drawing, it would be more interesting if the line up higher. But we can see already, you got a pretty good cat.
Oh, dang.
Did you know you could do that?
Doesn't look like a horse. Everything looked like a horse when I was
Not sure mine looks like a cat.
I had a friend that that's all she drew was horses.
It was a cat.
You know. Yeah, and it's black, so. What about his eye? Placement is important in the eye. So it goes a little lower than the top of the nose. And I'm gonna, the eyes. What is it? This is side two. This is not a cat's eye straight on. Anyway.
Mine is an angry cat.
But it's a cat. I mean,
But it is true, it's like, I mean, you could tell it if you had to guess what it, they are. It's
right,
a cat.
everybody didn't kind of hold it up. Did basically everyone has cats? It's all shaded over there.
Yeah, she's right on it.
Well, I use the side of the.
Yeah,
She's advanced.
but don't these look like cats?
It's getting there.
What did you use? You use circles, spheres, little
Closer
triangles?
than I would have guessed.
No spheres, circles.
Do we have to?
Well, come on.
No.
I can hold up this, you can hold up that.
But you can tell it's a cat. Yes.
And I like how everybody's face is shaped a little different, I mean, like this,
It is
muzzle or whatever.
And when you do portraiture, people or cats or animals or something, a little bit of you, if you're the artist, is gonna get into that. You can't make it totally, plus it's stuck in time, it's static. So you need to, I love to try to catch expressions in some of my portraiture. Yeah, I've got this one girl who, somebody threw snow on her, she's screaming, you know, and to get that expression and that feeling.
I play pickleball, and there's a woman at pickleball that actually brings her stuff, and when she's resting, she's drawing people in motion and doing all of that.
That's true, people move all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you wanna like sit and really get someone live, that's why so many rely on photos. To get them live, you need to be like a library or airport or somewhere they're gonna sit for a while or in a park. Or just draw really quickly, you'll look at them, study, get some idea, but that takes practice to get those gestures. In college, we would do figures, which I love doing figure drawing, but you'd start out, the warm-ups were like 30 to 1 minute, 30 second to 1 minute sketch it, get the whole body down, just, how do you do that? I don't know. This is about this person here. They're standing there, and there they are. That's a gesture drawing.
Huh.
So that's a trick, and that's a good exercise to play around with. It's because I'm an artist.
Yeah.
Kidding.
My daughter was an architect student at UT Knoxville, and there's a statue there, and they had to go, and everybody got a sign, like she had the ankle or the back.
Did they grid it out?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they had to, but they had to individually pick the thing, and she said, you know, just staring at that one section of the thing and drawing that, she said, I don't even like that statue. You know,
Be drawing.
the intensity of just doing that one section.
That one section. It's like I had college professors, we'd go out on location, you know, plein air drawing or something, and, you know, you see artists and they're walking around and they're looking, you know, for the beautiful side. But then you go through a training where you just, wherever you are, find something and make that interesting. That's a great exercise too. So these people that spend a half an hour finding the right place, and then they plunk themselves down there for 3 hours, when the light changes 20 minutes to 40 minutes, and your light has changed so much, you've got to be doing something else. All right, I'd like to, you want to try this again? Practice a couple more of these? Okay. And then next week, and I'll send some sheets that you can practice from, and you can find photos, try to find simple photos, or set something up in front of you. And think of its basic, absolute basic shape, and try to keep this week on those 2-dimensional shapes, square, circle, and triangle. Next week, we jump into the 3-dimensionals, and we'll get to the sphere and the cube and all that. And that leads into the same thing, thinking. Like here, well, the cat's gone. You know, it's not just the outline, those 2-dimensional shapes we're looking at, it will be 3 dimensions, because that's gonna help us when we get into shading and feeling that solid form. Good, yeah?
Do you want us to make a still life with several objects or just stick to one while we're starting?
Start
with this
simple.
one? Okay.
As you get going, you can try more, 2 or 3, usually when I start out, and we'll get into this, everybody's at a different angle here. So we decided 2 tall rectangles, kind of an oval, but from my point of view, I have to look at the fact that the base of the oval back there is touching at about 1/4 of the way up on the bottle. But that's more like late next week or week 3.
So better to start with one object and
I would start-
identify the pieces of it,
Yes,
the basic shapes.
exactly. Well said. Everyone get that what she said?
How she's planned.
Is it better when you're learning to draw big or little, or does it matter?
I recommend, this is about as small as I recommend going. But you have this sketchbook, so fill it up, you know. I like this size because it uses more of my arm. When I'm painting, I like to be able to do this, but can't do that. You can do that with pastels. Works better with oil and stuff. But pastels, you have to glass it afterwards. And it gets heavy. And I use non-reflective, anti-reflective glass. Trees. Oh, trees would be good. And I'll send you this at some point as well. So there's many different types of trees. All trees are not the same. And it's so easy to, let's find this oak. This is on a PDF, so I can't. If you wanted to draw the oak, keeping it in our two-dimensional shapes, right? What shapes would we see? Can you see? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Triangle.
Triangle on the base, yep.
So you're saying the base is kind of, the trunk is kind of a triangle? More or less?
Little bit of a rectangle,
Yeah, in the
triangle,
center,
and
Using-
the circle.
and a circle on the top.
Yeah, that works well. Or probably my simplest way would be like a hemisphere, like a half circle,
Circle.
almost, right? And then it pops up a little bit there, it kind of hangs out a little more there. But starting with those simple shapes. And then with trees, you get into your Fibonacci series. Oh. She's like, oh, there's the math again.
It's all math, everything's.
It is all math. That's what I always say. I think God's a mathematician. Just because if you break it down enough, you can get it down in that equation. And but it starts large at the base. By partway up, it's about half that width, and as the branches go out, they get half again and half again. So you get it that continual. Do you understand Fibonacci?
Uh-uh.
I have an example, but I don't know if I can.
I don't even know how to spell it.
It's Italian. Go figure. Fibonacci. This one. Sorry, you can't see. So the Fibonacci is more complex than what I'm saying, so I've simplified it to basically, it's a mathematical equation that if you start with something small and then you double it and then you double that and then you double that and it goes out and it grows into these beautiful spiral shapes, and a lot of life is based on that. You can get shells, there's beautiful cauliflower, that green cauliflower that's based on pine cones are all based on that. And trees, so if you look at, and rivers, you start with the little tributaries and then they get larger as they come down until you get the big river. It shows up here and there, so if you're putting branches on trees, for instance, you have to remember that the branches up here are gonna be a lot smaller than the trunk that's at the base. That was a quick Fibonacci explanation.
How do you spell it? How do you spell Fibonacci? Is it
Fibonacci.
CCI?
Say that one more time.
You want me to write it out? Sure. Fibonacci. And I went to type it in, I got to FIB and it popped up as Fibonacci, because I've looked at it before. All right. Going back to my tree again. Spruce tree. That's easy.
Triangle.
We got a triangle, right? Okay, so we put a triangle here. Now, of course, we know in nature it's going to be more interesting if it's irregular. But as we go up, well, I'm trying so hard not to get three-dimensional on this. The branches are going to get smaller and they start reaching up higher as they go up. And then I'm just going to do a contour drawing on this. Kind of the outline, typical Christmas tree.
But it's not flat across the bottom, it's a little curvy. Typically.
Yeah. It is because we're not looking at it like this. Okay, no, see, you're getting couple weeks ahead of me here.
Sorry, I shouldn't
No, you're fine, I'm teasing.
have, I just thought I was.
But it is, it's a bit of a curve, because even if it's a cylinder, I guess this can be seen. The base of a cylinder, and we'll repeat this later, but this is a circle, right? And the only time you can see it as a line, if it's at your eye level, it's gonna look like a line. Anything else in between, you're gonna see a curve. And the base of that fir tree, because it's conical, it's a cone, you're gonna see a little curve, because part of it's coming out at you, while we don't see things just flat. But for this week, it's flat. Oh, it's a nice kind of, that's not really an umbrella tree, that's one of those Serengeti trees. Anybody, what are the names of those?
Oh, I can't see mine.
Dunno. But that's pretty nice, that's just kind of upside down triangle. A little on top. And a curve. And then the branches, and you can see this very easily, how it's thicker at the base. Gets kind of half the size, the branches get smaller as they go out. And a lot of our trees around here, the branches are gonna peek through little, what people call sky holes. Every now and then you'll see a branch toward the top. So you can't have that be as large as your base here. You wanna draw your hand? You wanna try your hand?
Yeah.
But we need to stay in the hand this time with just our two-dimensional shapes.
Did this in ninth grade. That was a few years back.
All right. I'm starting at the middle.
We made turkeys out of that.
That's right. Square.
Square.
Okay. The pond here. I need something that's gonna show it better. I'm gonna make a mess of myself. All right.
You can see that?
Square. And then we have these rectangles going off. They're divided up, half, quarter, right? So I'm gonna have a rectangle going off a little bit of an angle, that way. Now I measure a little bit, how much of that to that. A little less than a third, like 1.5, so about there. Same with my next joint, and my next joint's a little shorter. Look at that. Go figure. You can draw. Does this help, that
Yeah.
illustration on my hand? He's going up that way. Notice though that this is, my pinky. He kind of falls off a little bit. He doesn't, it's not an absolute square, it kind of slides down there. Joint is down a little further. Wait.
I don't look so
Big old whoops here.
I'm getting the distance.
Well, what this is helping, doesn't look great, but it's helping you understand the structure. The thumb, I'm gonna sink it into the, that square. And I'm seeing more of a truncated triangle there. So I'm getting kind of a triangle, but then it's cut off kind of at that first joint right there. The thumb, the first joint is down in where these guys are here, so we often add too many. Then this guy, and this guy. Whoops. And then like we did with the cat, that, oh, whoa, that thumb is way too big for that. I was just gonna erase it with this. Yeah,
Huh.
that got too big. Looks like a robot hand. And rectangle for the wrist and the hand. Whew. I mean, it's not wow, but it helps us think of the structure and the basic ratio of one element to another, which we haven't talked much about, but how long is the first joint in comparison to the palm section of the hand? And learning to kind of visually measure. Right? Look at these. What drawing hands. Wait till next week when you draw it again and you use the cylinders and stuff. It's gonna be, long, skinny little. Did you trace? Yeah. That's really nice. Wow. So the thinking is good, right? I mean, it's helping.
Yes, it helps.
If I traced, I'd get.
Still thinking
Mine looks like that.
Mine looks like one of those medieval
That was very
metal
short.
gloves, you know, that the.
Yours does look like a very.
Like Transformer driving.
Yeah. Because we're sticking with those very basic shapes.
I know, it's like I was looking at perspective, look
Yeah.
how much shorter I am. I
Mhm.
drew all
That's
short.
good.
Short.
And then the skin, of course, that connects the
Yeah.
thumb and stuff. Very nice. Thumb looks a little short, right? But this, it's a hand. Have you drawn a hand before?
Ninth grade.
Ninth grade. How was your hand back in ninth grade?
It was, I got an A.
Okay, you had a good teacher. And you were a good artist, I don't mean just the teacher.
We're happy.
That's the point,
Look at our
yeah.
hands, they look like
They look like
hands.
hands.
Almost.
Thinking mine looks like a teapot with some breadsticks in it.
There's always that.
See, now you're ready for that
Oh
still
my God,
life.
it's a teapot.
That's, now see, now
Cinnamon sticks in there.
you're going into the Dali aspect of
Oh.
things,
Okay.
yeah, right? Because Dali, is that a hand or is it a vase with sticks coming out of it? Who knows? That kind of surrealistic bending of reality. You know how he did that a lot? You probably, I don't know if you've heard the story, but he would take naps, like in a chair or something, and he'd hold a spoon or something metal, and he'd fall asleep, and below the spoon or on the floor, he had a plate. So he, as he fell asleep, when he hit that, is it the REM cycle when, right? That you totally relax and the spoon would drop and he'd wake up in the midst of a dream. And it would be fresh in his mind.
Oh,
Isn't that
you didn't get much sleep.
kind of a crazy genius? Well, that's why his eyes always looked big. He would do that on purpose. Remember the picture with the eyes and his eyes? Yeah, and his mustache. Dali. Dali. Which wasn't until I really learned Spanish that I realized, oh, there's an accent on the I. It's Dali. The other thing, measuring, how long are the fingers compared to the base of the hand? So if you wanted to do you get your first square down, then kind of the same size, the top of your fingers are gonna be up to about here. So then your fingers have to fit in that size. So you're using one aspect to measure the other. And as we get further on, I talk about choosing a unit of measure, because we'll be looking at something. I mean, and it could be a house, so you have to put it in ratio to itself. So if the house is 3 times as long as it is high, you have to translate that onto a piece of